What's up everyone? In today's chess video, I will be teaching you a crazy opening trap to help you increase your win rate with the black pieces in the Italian game. Of course, it starts with e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to c4. Since this trap takes place in the gioco piano, we respond with bishop to c5. Afterwards, white enters the pianissimo variation with d3. In response to this move, we place our second knight on f6. In most cases, the opponent castles and we play d6 to open up a diagonal for our light-squared bishop. Now if they play bishop to g5, there is a high chance that they will enter the trap. The critical move here is h6. Most players refuse the trade and move their bishop to h4, trying to provoke the advance of the g-pawn. However, this is a terrible decision as their king has already castled, which implies that launching a pawn storm on the king side will actually be positive in this case, as there is the possibility in many lines featuring this concept, such as this one, to castle queenside and relentlessly attack their monarch. So here, of course, we play g5. Now here, some players might think that there is a tactic involving sacrificing their knight to pin ours to our queen, and attacking the knight with their own queen as well as their other knight, exploiting the pin with the goal of winning the knight back while having two extra pawns. Still, they are completely wrong. Let me show you why. After they take our g5 pawn with their knight, we simply capture it with the h-pawn, and after they take it with our bishop, we play rook to g8, threatening the bishop. The most logical way to defend it is by playing h4. However, white is completely losing because we can cleverly refute this tactic. Here, we play the astonishing rook takes g5. This move might be difficult to understand at first, but you can be assured that I will clearly explain the ideas behind this sacrifice. After the opponent takes our rook, we play bishop to g4, attacking the queen. They will slide it to a safe square such as d2, after which we move our knight to h5, aiming to reach the f4 square, blocking the defense of the g5 pawn, which we will eventually take with our queen, marking its entrance into the attack. The opponent might want to kick away our powerful dark-squared bishop from the diagonal on which it is creating a deadly pin on the f-pawn, or win a few tempi by giving away their b-pawn. Funnily enough, we actually ignore the threat caused by the pawn and play the aforementioned knight to f4, sacrificing another piece with immense compensation. After they take our bishop, we sacrifice one more piece with bishop to f3. If they decide to take our bishop, we take the g5 pawn with our queen, forcing the king to reach the h-file, where we checkmated by sliding our queen to the g2 square. Most people will see this line and will try to hold on with g3. They are still completely lost, as we can take on g5 with the queen, threatening to reach the h-file and deliver an opera mate on h1. The only move left for them is to capture our knight with our queen, after which we take back with the e-pawn and enjoy a material advantage combined with a great attack. But of course, after g5, most players retreat their bishop to g3, after which we play the stunning h5. This is a very intriguing move as it gambits a pawn, which also happens to be very close to our king. Here, we will take a look at the three most logical responses from white, which are h4, knight takes g5, and b4. Let's start with h4. Following this move, we relocate our knight on h7, adding a defender to the g5 pawn. A possible line could follow as c3, g4, knight f to d2, knight to f8, beginning a rotation of the knight, b4, attacking our bishop, bishop to b6, bishop to b3, knight to g6, getting a knight's outpost, a4, trying to trap our bishop, a6 to create an escape square, knight to c4, as white has no way to defend their h-pawn, knight captures on h4, knight takes b6, c takes b6, bishop takes h4, and queen takes h4. This is an equal position, as even though our king does not have a lot of pawns to protect it, it can hardly be reached, and we have a certain attacking potential. Okay, but what if they play the evident knight takes g5? we respond with a bewildering h4. If they play b4, we obviously retreat our bishop to b6 and follow the moves that I am going to present. But this is probably not what your opponent is going to play. The chances are that they are directly going to take on f7 either with the knight or the bishop. Bishop takes f7 check is the least logical move, as it only gives a check without gaining a significant amount of material and leaves the dark squared bishop trapped. If it occurs though, we simply move our king to f8 and their attack has vanished. They have to take the e5 pawn with their bishop as a desperado, and we capture it with the knight. After knight to e6 check, we take the knight and they take back with the bishop. We play h3 and they defend with g3. Finally, we move our queen to e8. Even though the material is equal, we have a very active and flexible position, and we will have an easy attack on the white king. Now get ready for a series of incredible moves. If the knight takes the f7 pawn, we play the crazy sacrifice h takes g3. This is pure madness. Even Stockfish has trouble understanding this move. Just to prove to you how confusing it is, I will let the engine run for about a minute. The knight can take either our rook or our queen, but let's start with the rook capture, as it is the most simple one to analyze. After knight takes h8, we take the f2 pawn with our bishop with check, and they move their king to h1. Now queen to e7 to activate our queen and intending to reach the h7 square. The knight moves to f7 to prevent the queen from landing on the set square, but we play d5 to break the connection between the bishop and the knight. Now bishop takes d5 and bishop to g4, attacking the white queen. They move it to safety on a square such as d2 and we capture the bishop. The opponent takes back with the e-pawn and we slide our queen to h4, threatening checkmate on h2. They put their queen on h6 to defend against the mate. However, we block the x-ray by placing our light squared bishop on h5. The only way for white to survive here is to give a few purposeless checks before eventually sacrificing the queen for the bishop, or sacrificing the knight to gain some time. Most people will nonetheless be tempted to play the move h3, in response to which we take it with the queen! What a move! After they capture our queen, we deliver a beautiful checkmate with bishop to f3, absolutely stunning. What if they take our queen, you might wonder? We play bishop to g4, attacking the queen. They slide it to either e1 or d2, queen to c1 being an immense blunder, which I will soon demonstrate. For now, let's say white plays queen to e1. We jump into the center with knight to d4, gaining a position in which our pieces are excellently placed for a devastating attack. Now, we will take a look at various possible responses from white. First, h3. We play knight to e2 check. Here, they are forced to give up the queen for our knight, or they will be subject to an amazing checkmate. If white moves their king to h1, we sacrifice our rook on h3 with check, which they are forced to capture with the g-pawn, and bishop to f3 as mate. But even if they give up the queen, they are in a terrible position. After we capture the queen with our bishop, the rook is under attack, and if they don't move it, we pick it up and are up the exchange. Even though we are down 2 pawns, we have a very active position. However, if they try to save the rook by sliding it to c1, we capture the f2 pawn with check, and after the king moves to h1, there is once again rook takes h3 check, g takes h3, and bishop to f3 checkmate. Even if white sees this and concedes to give up their queen by playing knight to e6, saving at least their knight, we have a stupendous mating net. We play the ridiculous knight to f6 check. This forces white to capture it with the g-pawn, which we take with the bishop. Here, we are threatening to capture the h-pawn, which would be checkmate, and if they take our g-pawn, we have a no-para mate. So there is absolutely nothing white can do to save the game, apart from delaying checkmate, by playing, for example, knight takes c7 check, after which we play king to e7, then knight to d5 check, knight takes d5, h3, rook takes h3, and finally, There is nothing more white can do, so they take on d5 with the bishop, and we finally have checkmate on h1. What if the opponent attacks our rook by playing knight to f7? Well, we capture the h2 pawn with our rook, and white cannot defend themselves at the same time against knight to e2 check, which loses the queen, and knight to f3 check, creating a mating net. Note that if they had played queen to c1 after bishop to g4, they would have been forced to lose a tempo to move it to a square where it would have eventually had to sacrifice itself in order to prevent checkmate. This would have led to the following continuation: knight to d4, queen to e3, knight to e2 check, queen takes e2, bishop takes e2, knight to e6, knight takes e4, d takes e4, g takes h2 check, king to h1, bishop takes c4, knight takes c7 check, king to d7, knight takes a8, bishop takes f1, knight to c3, bishop to a6, f3, and rook takes a8. As you can see here, black is up material and has the bishop pair. Finally, let's take a look at 9b4. This move aims to distract either our knight or our bishop from their powerful position before capturing on g5, threatening to capture the f7 pawn. Here, we refuse the gambit and retreat our bishop to b6. If the opponent takes the g5 pawn, all the concepts explained earlier still apply. If instead, they play h4 to make a space for their bishop to retreat, we place our light-squared bishop on g4, pinning the knight. They will defend it with their other knight, with the intention of eventually moving their queen away from the diagonal on which our bishop is spinning their knight. Afterwards, we invade the center with knight to d4. After c3, we capture on f3 with the knight, and they take back with their own knight. We subsequently rotate our other knight on d7 in order to open a diagonal for our queen. Following h captures g5, we advance our h-pawn to kick away their bishop. Notice that they cannot capture it due to the pin on the knight. So they retreat to h2 and we play queen to e7, preparing ourselves to eventually castle queenside. After d4, expanding in the center, we play the aggressive h3, to which they respond with g3. We now take on d4. They capture back and we play rook to g8, threatening the g5 pawn as the knight is still pinned. Since they have no real way of defending their pawn, they will play a move such as rook to c1, and we will take the g5 pawn with the rook. Here, we have a small edge as our king will soon castle to safety. We have a nice spin on the knight, and our pieces are well developed. I would like to thank everyone who stayed until the end. If you have any questions regarding this opening or any video of mine, do not hesitate to ask them in the comments. Have a nice day everyone, and I hope to see you in the next video.